Hello everyone, welcome to Shortlisted. Hope you all have an amazing day. In today's video we are going to talk about weapons that had changed the way wars were fought. Let's start the list with gunpowder. Gunpowder first appeared in 9th century China ironically as a formula for medical use, but its use as a weapon was self-evident, as it had become a means of starting fires. During the Song dynasty, in the early 11th century, the use of gunpowder as an incendiary rather than an explosive appeared, documented in ancient texts of the time. Fire arrows became both an offensive and defensive weapon. Around 2 centuries later, explosives in the form of bombs appeared. By the late 13th century, Chinese handheld cannons were a feature of the battlefield. But it was the Mongols who introduced the Europeans to gunpowder by deploying their weapons against them. They learned about it quickly, and by the 14th century, the Europeans had improved the quality of gunpowder and safety during manufacture, by introducing the process of wet grinding the ingredients, then air drying the mixture. By the onset of the Age of Discovery in the late 15th century, gunpowder weapons dominated the battlefields of Europe, and during the Spanish conquest of New Spain, they proved invincible against the natives of Mesoamerica. On number 6 are the automatic weapon. Automatic guns emerged in the late 19th century, and the generals and admirals commanding troops and ships were once again faced with the need to change how battles were fought. The machine gun, embedded in fortified positions, allowed a small team of men to command an area that formerly required scores of men to defend. Massed columns of infantry advancing towards them were at their mercy. Automatic weapons made the advance of infantry in densely packed marching order obsolete, so they had to learn to move in smaller squads and cover to cover. The introduction of assault rifles made it even more challenging, as now a small squad has the same firepower as a machine gun. There is no doubt that the introduction of automatic weapons has changed warfare, as modern armies equip virtually all of their infantry with fully automatic weapons, creating firepower which dictates how they engage in combat with their counterparts in the armies of their enemies. The next one is radio communications and radio-controlled weapons. Technically not a weapon, but important in war, sometimes even more than weapons. Before the advent of radio on the battlefield, commanders relied on messengers to and from combat units to deliver orders and receive reports of conditions at the front. Numerous means of conveying information over distances, such as semaphore signals and signal flags, relayed orders between ships, often found themselves obscured by heavy smoke. They also had the disadvantage of being seen and read by the enemy. Some armies used carrier pigeons to deliver information. By necessity their messages were short and often cryptic. Radio changed that, offering commanders direct and real-time information, and a means of delivering orders to respond to changing conditions. Armies became more flexible in the field, able to respond instantly. Field commanders could request and receive artillery support, air support, or reinforcements. Next on the list is the airplane. In 1914, a means of observing the enemy by airplane appeared in Europe. It wasn't long before observers were shooting at each other with handguns, rifles, and specially mounted machine guns. Soon the planes were converted into a weapon capable of destroying other airplanes and strafing targets on the ground. Aerial bombs were soon added to the aircraft's repertoire. By 1916 the airplane had arguably become the deadliest weapon on the Western Front. Before World War II, a new term entered the military lexicon. Control of the air became the critical factor concerning military operations, both on land and at sea. Strategic bombing to destroy enemy industry and infrastructure became an important part of the military. Tactical bombing hindered troop movements, supply, and defensive formations. Fighter aircraft wrestled for control over the skies, considered essential before the launch of major operations. Control of the air remains a major concern of military planners and is likely to be so for the foreseeable future. The next one is undoubtedly the long-range ballistic and cruise missile. The first ballistic missile used in warfare was the V-2 rockets launched by Germany against Great Britain in World War II. Many of the engineers and technicians who developed these rockets came to the United States and the Soviet Union after the war. By the late 1950s, intercontinental ballistic missiles tipped with nuclear warheads became part of the military arsenal of both countries. In the 1960s, such weapons were deployed at sea in submarines and were virtually undetectable by enemies. Cruise missiles can be launched from the ground, from aircraft, from surface ships, and submarines appeared during the Cold War. Cruise missiles sank or heavily damaged British ships during the Falklands War, devastated targets in Iran during the Gulf War, and struck targets from hundreds of miles away during the Kosovo War. Cruise missiles offer to pinpoint accuracy, delivering a variety of types of warheads and can be launched by operators far outside the enemy's range of retaliation. Like drones and similar weapons, cruise missiles deliver considerable punch without endangering the lives of those who maintain and launch them against their targets. The next one is the drones. The U.S. Army developed the first pilotless flying bomb, the Kettering Bug, during the First World War. Though it flew successfully in experiments, it never reached the battlefield. Nonetheless, remotely operated vehicles continued to be an area of interest to the militaries of the world, including Hitler's V-1, and the U.S. Army and Navy's Operation Aphrodite. Aphrodite was a project designed to deliver explosive-packed B-17 and B-24 bombers to targets, with the aircraft operated remotely via radio control. Research into remote-controlled vehicles continued during and following the war, by no means limited to aircraft. Undersea submersible drones, ordnance disposal drones, remote-controlled tanks and anti-tank weapons, drones for clearing minefields, and others were developed. Through advanced communications networks, they can be operated from thousands of miles away, monitored in real time by their operator. Soldiers and sailors participate in combat while nowhere near the front lines, if in fact there are any front lines. Several navies developed remote-controlled littoral, inshore, combat vessels, which can enter enemy harbors and attack installations without endangering a crew. And on last is the obvious one, the nuclear bomb. The atomic bombs detonated over Japan near the end of World War II changed warfare immediately in one simple way. It gave the United States the most powerful military on Earth, capable of smashing any nation in a wave of atomic destruction. Soon more and more countries got it, as today most countries in the world have it. The threat of international annihilation through all-out nuclear exchange between the major powers prevented the deterioration of global crises into another world war. It even had a name, Mutual Assured Destruction, or MAD. Nuclear weapons created a new type of war between the USSR and its satellites, and the United States and its allies. It was called the Cold War, and it remained in place from the end of World War II until the dissolution of the Soviet Union. The Cold War led to huge and expensive arms races, extensive espionage operations, a race to control space exploration, and limited armed conflicts, including wars in Korea and Vietnam. All were held in check by fear of MAD. Today, at least 9 nations, including India, Pakistan, North Korea, and Israel, possess nuclear weapons. They are joined by the United States, Russia, China, Great Britain, and France. Thanks for watching. Please like, share and subscribe.